My name is Gwendolyn Ward. I'm the parent of Christina Morris Ward, the 15-year-old who was hit on Halloween, October the 31st, 2012. From my understanding, Christina was hit crossing the street on her way to school that morning. It was quite dark that morning. I had left out before her and got a call from my son, who told me that I needed to get to Shady Grove Hospital as soon as possible. Once I reached Shady Grove Hospital, I found Christina deceased, laying on the hospital bed, and was told exactly, what happened that morning.
It is so important that all of our students, our parents, everybody understands that unfortunately cars can be lethal.
We've had typically over 10,000 crashes in Montgomery County every year. 400 or more of those are crashes involving pedestrians. And the real tragic news is that last year we had 6 people killed, 6 pedestrians killed in crashes. The year before that we had 11. The year before that we had 14. And so we've got 30 or more people killed in the last 3 years who were pedestrians and walking roadways, and that clearly is the biggest concern we have and the biggest safety issue that we're trying to address.
You have to remember that there are different goals here. The car's trying to get where they want to get as quickly as possible. The pedestrian's trying to get where they want to get to as quickly as possible. And the pedestrian's always going to lose in that battle.
There's an equal share of responsibility for drivers and for pedestrians to make sure that they're seen, make sure that they're not distracted, and make sure that they're being safe.
You always have to be defensive. You always have to be thinking, you know what, I'm not going to take a risk. I'm going to respect the rules, whether it's a don't walk sign or the walk sign, whatever it may be. I'm going to look up from my device. I'm not going to text. I'm not going to talk on the phone. I'm going to focus on where I am and what's around me.
Well, texting while driving is 100% against the law in the state of Maryland. It's completely unsafe. If you think about it, I'll grab my phone. I don't know, as a pedestrian, do you want to see me driving down the road like this, where I'm looking around and looking in front of me? Or is it better for me to be doing this? It makes no sense for me to be looking down while I'm driving. A car can be a weapon. It's very, very dangerous to be behind the wheel if you're not paying attention. And when you take your eyes off the road for that split second, that's really all the time it takes for disaster to happen. And so there's never an excuse for texting while you're driving. And that, by the way, includes when you're sitting at red lights. It includes when you're sitting at red lights, because how many times have you been texting, you look up, there's a green light, all of a sudden you're shocked, you hit the gas, you weren't paying attention to who's around you, and you strike someone or something. Walking while texting is something that I see our students doing all the time, or even walking by listening to music or changing the songs on their iPhones or their iPods. And again, it's about distractions. If you're walking down the sidewalk and you're texting or you're talking, that's one thing. But when you get to a corner of a road and you're looking to cross, stop texting, stop changing songs, and do what you learned when you were in elementary school. Look left, look right, look left again, and then and only then cross the street when it's safe. But when you're walking across the street, paying more attention to what somebody is saying to you in a text than you are to the cars that are coming at you, you're putting yourself in very serious danger.
Put that phone down when you're crossing the street. Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff is not, more important than your life. So.
Most of us, when we're walking in areas that we're very familiar with, we're walking, the same route to school or to a store, you get very comfortable. And oftentimes, while you're walking, you're listening to music, you're talking on the phone, and these are the kinds of distractions that can really take your attention away from those critical times when you're crossing a street. And there's nothing wrong with listening to music or talking with friends as you're walking to and from somewhere. But in those few seconds where you're crossing a roadway, where there's traffic, you've got to pay attention to that traffic. Take the earphones off. Stop talking for just a second until you get across that street safely. Making sure you cross where people can see you. Too often, when we look at some of these crashes involving pedestrians, when we analyze, well, how did it happen? And what you find is that a person was walking from an area where they couldn't be seen by the driver, or they were wearing clothing that at night that wasn't reflective, and they couldn't be seen at night. It's just common sense things that I think we can all do to enhance our safety.
Drivers who are coming down the road are far more likely to see us if we're wearing brighter colors, if we're wearing neon colors, or at least some kind of reflective gear that alerts them that we're there. If we're wearing dark clothes, dark hoodies that are covering our heads, and not paying attention, it's a recipe for problems. We can't always count on the driver knowing that we're there, especially early in the morning when the sun is just coming up, late in the afternoon when the sun is coming down, or during bad weather when it's not nearly as light out as it usually is. So we have to make sure that we hedge our bets and create as safe an environment for us as possible. I think clothing can help.
I want you all to make sure that you continue to do what you're supposed to do so that you can see, the next year, or you can walk across that stage when it comes to graduation. And, I just be safe out there.
I know that, you've heard over and over and over again messages from your principal, from your teachers about, wearing reflective clothing, about not being distracted when you're walking to and from school. When you cross a street, make sure that you look. Make sure you're aware of the traffic patterns, things like that. You hear those messages over and over. But the fact is that you need to hear those messages, because eventually, I think it's going to sink in, eventually you're going to understand that we're trying to prevent a tragic occurrence, because it only takes just a second of someone being distracted, not paying attention to traffic, a driver not paying attention to where people are walking, for there to be a tragic outcome.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the pedestrian always has the right of way. Now, I know legally that's not necessarily true. When there's a red light, you've got to pay attention to that as walkers, as pedestrians. But if there's a pedestrian who's crossing the street, even if they're breaking the law, the driver, I believe, does have a responsibility to be aware of that, to be aware of their own surroundings, and to slow down. The pedestrian, though, has a responsibility as well. They need to know the law, and they need to not just assume that because they're walking, that everybody knows that they're there and everybody's going to stop. I think sometimes in our school, some of our students feel that they have the right to cross the street whenever they want to. They would be so much safer if they took the time to walk just a few extra steps to the crosswalk. Crossing in the crosswalk is critical. If they waited just a few moments for the light to turn, that would increase their safety significantly. And if they walked in pairs, because the larger the number of students who are together, the more likely the drivers are to see them.
I don't have Christina being herself in the house, her normal goofy self. I know y'all probably see her a different way, or you probably see her the same way, but it's no more that fun personality within the household. Our family, we're taking it in a stride. We're moving day to day. We do understand that we have an angel watching over us, and she's helping us to get through this tough time. But we're all progressing, and we're moving forward, even though we've lost them.
I unfortunately have seen students, particularly teenagers, have this sense that somehow it's never going to happen to them, and that they can, dodge in between cars, or the car's not going fast enough, and that it's just they're bigger than life. And I just want kids to understand that unfortunately it can happen to anybody. Getting hit by a car can happen to anybody, and why take that risk? As a community, the adults, we love our kids too much to allow any of these things to happen, so please, please, please be very aware of what's going on, and just, it's so much better to be safe than sorry, as they say.
Pedestrian safety is about avoiding tragedy. We've had 30 pedestrians killed over the last 3 years. Every one of those people had a family. They had brothers, they had sisters, they had parents. Some of them had sons and daughters. Those cases, whether it was the driver's fault, whether it was the pedestrian's fault, didn't make any difference. The fact is, you had families that were affected for the rest of their lives. So just to take a few seconds when you're crossing a street, to not be distracted by, to get across that street safely, to get across that street where you can be seen. That's the message we want to put out there, and we're hopeful that if folks hear that message and pay attention to that message, that we can avoid future tragedies like we've experienced over the last several years.
You know, I'm here. I'm here because I want to keep this going. I want to make sure that people understand, you know, the benefit of this and, you know, how important it is to make sure that we keep our students safe, because I don't want any parent to have to experience this in the future. I mean, I know things are going to happen, but this is the hardest thing for, especially for her being only 15 years old. And you know, we just celebrated her 16th birthday on February the 23rd. So, you know, everybody, her friends and family and everyone has been there for us. But I just want y'all to make sure that y'all continue to encourage safety.